Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Spotlight webinar featuring real-time shop floor SPC. I am Lisa Sterling, your host and moderator for today's session. Before we get started, I would like to mention just a couple of housekeeping items. We invite you to ask questions throughout the presentation by typing in your Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen, as your phone is muted during the session. We will address the questions received at the end of the presentation. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and will be available in a few days. I would now like to introduce you to our presenter, Tim Hogan, Vice President of Business Development for HiQA. And with that, I will turn the floor over to Tim.
Well, thank you very much, Lisa. And thank you everyone for joining us today. Now, your time is very valuable and we are not about to waste it. So let's jump right into the message and get to showing you how acquiring data on the shop floor and showing SPC on the shop floor can streamline your manufacturing process and provide greater transparency to your individual operations. So in case you're new to HiQA, here's HiQA at a glance. We were founded in 2015, and we have both distribution partners across the world and direct salespeople here in the US and Canada. But for all of our company resources, 25% of the employees are dedicated to supporting you after the sale. So implementation is a key component of the HiQA solution, and we have an entire team that is dedicated to your success. We currently have over 900 customers globally, from small 5-person job shops to multi-billion-dollar OEM corporations. Now, we're very proud of this list, but it's not meant to brag. We simply wanted to show you some of our customers to reassure you that we currently work in many different industries: aerospace, medical, automotive, construction, oil and gas, even defense. So just to be clear and make sure we're all on the same page, this short webinar is intended for anyone looking to acquire data on the shop floor, have it automatically saved real time, and display ongoing SPC run charts and other statistical elements as well. So when we open the software in a minute, we'll be skipping some of the foundational elements like extracting GD&T, creating in-process check sheets, and building those FAI reports. Shop floor data collection is closely tied to manufacturing operations. So today we'll be looking at manufacturing operations and how we can acquire the data on the shop floor real time using our IME/IMX browser-based application. We'll also show how this same information can be used to display SPC run charts right on the shop floor. But we can never get very far in a presentation without talking about one of our key advantages, and that's the database. HiQA solution is fully database driven. So whether you're setting up an inspection plan, inputting measurements on the shop floor, or automatically importing your CMM data, it's all in the database and available real time. You'll be able to track SPC right on the shop floor. Even better, you could be in your office tracking SPC as it's being entered on the shop floor, because it's all in the database. Oh, I also forgot to mention, the database is on your secured network. This is not a cloud-based solution, so the data never leaves your internal network. So for the rest of our short Spotlight webinar, we're going to open the software, quickly balloon a print, and then build some manufacturing operations. Then we'll get into the shop floor data collection tool, where we'll show you how you can enter data from the shop floor directly into the database. We'll also show how that can automatically populate the database so SPC can be tracked on the shop floor in real time. We'll also discuss how this same exact information can be accessed from any workstation that has access to the centralized database. Now, this might sound like a lot to get through, but you'll be pleasantly surprised because everything I just mentioned is integrated into the same software, we can perform these tasks with a simple click of a mouse. This is actually probably going to run under time because everything can be done so effectively and efficiently. Okay, enough talking. Let's jump into the software and show how easy shop floor data collection and SPC can be. So here we have Inspection Manager, and everything starts from Inspection Manager and usually starts with a 2D print or a 3D model with the embedded GD&T in it, or sometimes called PMI data, or MBD, standing for model-based definition. But we're simply going to start from a two-dimensional PDF drawing. Now, we can use any type of pictorial-based drawing, whether it's a PDF, a TIFF, a JPEG, anything of that nature. We can simply use any and all of it. Excuse me. So as we get going here, this is just a simple PDF. We use this because it has a good representation of many things. Multiple place dimensions, GD&T, basic dimensions, regular dimensions. It just gives you a good representation of everything. So when you open it, just like we did here, we simply come up here to Auto Balloon, single click on Auto Balloon, and then it gives us a couple options here. You know, if there's multiple pages that are available, you can do all of them at once. Actually, yesterday I just did a 4-page, 251 balloon dimension drawing, and it took less than 3 minutes to complete. So that was pretty, that was pretty quick. But you can turn off basic, you can turn off reference, different options here. In this case, we're just simply going to click OK. And now the OCR takes over. And this is our proprietary OCR, optical character recognition. And we designed it to look specifically for dimensions and for GD&T. Now, as you can see, that took about 11 seconds or so. And the drawing is completely ballooned. All of the characteristics have been identified uniquely. But more importantly, if we look down here in what we call the bill of characteristics, all of the information from the print has already been extracted and is now in the database. This is, again, part of the real-time database we've been talking about so far. From the drawing zone to what the requirement actually is, nominal information, the tolerances have already been extracted. If there's a tolerance on the print, for example, this is a plus tolerance, it's noted on the print. And then if it isn't, it comes off of a tolerance chart. So we can use either one. If it is on the print, it works as it should. So from there, all the information's already extracted. Now we're gonna skip over, again, just from a time's sake, a lot of the, let's call it bells and whistles that we would normally run through. For example, we can show alternate units. We can toggle back and forth between inch and metric right on the print. We have a whiteout function where it whites everything out so you can easily see if it happened to miss anything. So we have some neat creature comforts in there. We actually can extract title block text, so we can use our OCR to grab information off the title block and have it automatically populate the database entry, what we call the part record. So we'll skip over a lot of those things. However, one thing we don't want to skip over is kind of a key element that we have here. And if I just select this dimension, for example, a couple items we can do right inside the software that's all included in the software is what we call define gauge category and characteristic designator. Now we bring this up because this is all about helping the downstream effect. Okay, so when we get into the shop floor data side, this is going to help streamline that shop floor data side, and you'll see it as we get going here a little bit. Let me kind of explain what I mean. So if I look at this and I see this 2-inch dimension here, for example, I can select gauge category and say, how do I want to measure this later? Do I want to measure it on a CMM? Do I want to measure it with some type of gauge? Let's say I want to measure it with a blade micrometer, for example. I know it's not right, but bear with me. But this is just the category. keep in mind, this is not the specific gauge, right? Serial number, gauge number, anything else. This is just the category. Hey, use a caliper, use a micrometer, use something. And what that'll do downstream, kind of foreshadowing for later, is it will limit the list that comes up for the shop floor personnel who's going to enter that data. So they only see a select number. In this case, they would only see blade micrometers in that list instead of a list of the entire gauges. And we'll get into that in a minute. Just kind of wanted to foreshadow that a little bit. But characteristic designator. This is a completely configurable list. We have a little plus button right here. You can add new criticalities as you need them, whether you work with CTQs, KPCs, minor, major flight safety, whatever type of key characteristic it is, we can identify those there. Now I'm going to hit save here, and what it does is it saves these new requirements to this specific dimension, okay? And a couple things happen I'd just like to point out. So we have a designator column down here in our bill of characteristics that now shows it as a key characteristic. And we also have a rule set up in the system. And again, this is a local rule. This isn't, a general rule that comes with the software. But I have a rule set up on my specific system that says, hey, if it's a key characteristic, automatically update my sampling plan to be based on an AQL table instead of the default. And in this case, the default was set at 1. Set up a rule-based system to accomplish these things so we don't have to go and change all of these things automatically. And you can, again, have as many designators as you'd like. Maybe you'd have a key characteristic 1, a key characteristic 2, and you'd have different sampling plans for those different characteristics or designators. Certainly can do that. Let me give you another example of some of the rules we can do. If I select this, I have a rule in the system that says, if it's a perpendicularity, automatically make my gauge category a coordinate measuring machine. So if I just select my perpendicularity here, I can look over here and see that my category already says coordinate measuring machine. I haven't changed that at all. And that happened in the first 11 seconds that it took to balloon the print. It ballooned it, understood its perpendicularity, and then automatically assigned the gauge category. Now, we talk about that because as far as gauges go, we have a full gauge management system right in the software. It's not an add-on, it's not additional, it's part of the core software package. And if we select anything, here's that blade micrometer, for example, and I have all the information here for that blade micrometer. All the basic information here, serial number, where we got it from, the maintenance of it. And then the most important, right, is the calibration details. Who's the vendor who calibrated this, the individual who calibrated that, if it happens to be internal, and then the last calibration date, the frequency, all of that information, what the certificate number is. What a lot of our customers do is in the attachment section right here, they'll upload like the cert, calibration cert here. So now not only do you have it notated here, but it also have documentation to back up. And now that it's in the database, it's always logged and tracked with that gauge. So there are quite a few different, oh, by the way, before I hit that, also wanted to note that we do have notification settings set up to where, hey, if this gauge is expired or expiring soon, we can set up alerts. And that expiring soon maybe like 30 days, 45 days, something like that. Before it comes due for calibration, hey, make sure we let someone know that it's coming due. And this can be internal or external if you happen to have like a third party helping you out with calibration. So with that, we can also import all of your existing lists too. So you don't have to think that, please don't think that you need to import all of this data manually or enter it all manually. But one of the things that we do, and you'll see how this is all tied together in just a minute, when we get into the shop floor side. But if I select this thread plug gauge, we have a little tab down here called usage history. And if I click on that, what you see here is every single dimension that that gauge ever checked. Because we're tracking the gauge in the database, we're going to be tracking the actual information that's being entered in the database. And we have the engineering information, right? The requirement in the database. So now that we have all three of those, we have full usage history right down to this lot number, the serial number, the dimension number of the part itself. If we scroll over to the side, we can see who measured it, the date and the timestamp. We can even tie it to a specific machine, or if it was tied to a non-conformance report. And then obviously a good or bad check. So we have all of that information right in the database itself. So now that we have that information, we're going to get into the manufacturing operations. Now, in the manufacturing operations, we have this tab right here called manufacturing operations. And because when we do this part, when we manufacture this part, we're not just going to, chuck it in a mill and it's going to pop out a part. Sometimes if you run maybe a Swiss lathe or something, it would do that. But in this case, we're going to run this through operations. Maybe drill it in one op and rough it in another op and finish it. So let's say we're going to rough this part out, for example, and we're just going to select some overall dimensions here that would be affected by the roughing operation. If I select those and I just come over here to add operation, we can see that we have multiple dimensions here that are now that are affected by that operation. Okay. And we can come over here and select this and change this to whatever we want. I can type, maybe I could call this a roughing op. We can tie it to a specific work cell or a specific machine or specific process. Now, if we just assign it to a process, we won't get into this today, but we can actually automatically generate all of our PQP documentation, the control plans, the process flow diagrams, the PFEMAs. All of that documentation can be automatically generated if we notate what process we're using. But let's just say, okay, and now down in our bill of characteristics, we have a manufacturing operations pulled down, and I can say, I just want to look at my roughing operation right now. Now I have an in-process print just for my Op10. I know a lot of manufacturing engineers that they create a print for every operation. Well, you can do that right inside the software here. And you can even take this, all the information for the Op10, we only have the Op10 dimensions here. And you can update the nominal value. Let's say you want to add 20 thousandths. You can add, subtract, go by percentage, however you want to do it. And you can change the nominal, like you're leaving material to finish later, for example. And you can even set this to where maybe you want to open up the tolerance a little bit for the roughing operation. And you can assign a gauge category. I want to use my vernier caliper to measure this. And I hit apply and close. And now if I look at my bill of characteristics, I can see that all of my nominals have been adjusted by that 20 thousandths. And all of my tolerances, my plus or minus tolerances, are set to plus or minus 20 thousandths, even my basic dimension. So now I can go into my shop floor data system and be able to see this Op10. Okay, so let's do that right now. Let's get into the shop floor side of it. So on the shop floor side, we have Explorer, Express, and SPC. And I can just show you what they look like here. We have Explorer. Explorer and Express is a way to enter the data into the database. Okay. Now, when we do that, Explorer, think of it this way. They're kind of the same thing, but they have limited visibility. So Explorer is going to show every job available, and then it'll be up to the inspector or machinist out on the floor to be able to select the appropriate job, select the appropriate number. What Express does is it limits what the person out on the floor can see. And they, for example, they will only be able to see jobs that are assigned to them and specifically to them, not just to, everything. And then SPC we're going to get into as well here in just a few minutes. So let's go back into Explorer. We're going to log in here. And please note, we can also, if you have a badge system at your place, you can just scan a badge and log right in. Now, why are we logging in? Well, actually, before I hit that, please note that this is just a very simple, very lightweight application that's browser-based, right? We're in Google Chrome right now. This is not a specific application. This IP address is simply going internal into your network, into your system. This is not going external to the web at all. But we were talking about gauges a little bit before, and if we select gauge, here is my full list of gauges. And we can even, here's that blade micrometer, for example. We can check gauges out, We have all the database information here. We know who's logged in. And that's the important part, right? We know who's logged in. So now if I say where I'm taking it and check this out, now you can look in your system and see who is using it and where the current location is. That person can simply come back here and check in, and it's right back where it belongs. But when we talk about entering data into the system, we can click on Gallery View. And as I mentioned, it shows every job available for the people on the floor. And they could just thumb through here and see the different prints and pick out the one that they're doing. Or they can select by job number. Let's say they're doing order 66, for example. And it's like, oh, here's my print for this specific order. There's a nice dashboard here where you can come in to see the completion of the project itself. And then when we go into the serial number 1 here, now I have up here, I have my manufacturing operations, and I can select my roughing operation, for example. And now that I have information here, let me get the data out of here real quick so I can show you what it looks like. Now it's going to select this dimension and the overall look of this. Again, it's more simplistic, right? It's meant to be on a tablet. It's meant to be on a some type of touch screen, for example, so they can enter the information in over on the side. But now that we have a dimension selected here, we see the bottom here, and there's a nice little scroll screen here to let you know what the max and min is. You can even expand this, and this is dynamic. You can move it around, you can zoom in, you can zoom out. It's very user-friendly for the operators out on the floor to be able to use. This is blinking right now, if you can tell, in the webinar, because it's listening. Actually, it's listening for any type of input device. If you have a wireless gauge, a Bluetooth gauge, an RS-232 out gauge, it would input that data automatically. But we talked before about gauges and usage history. And this is where the category would come into play. If I would have had this selected, only this would have come up. So if I would have had this selected in our planning phase, this would have only come up. So this is how it streamlines the downstream effect. So if we select this, for example, now I've logged in, right? I know the dimension I'm measuring. I know the lot. I know the serial number. All that information is captured right up here. It keeps saying control here because I'm hitting control on my keyboard. That's why I get the circle. So that's why it's listening for that input device. But if I enter information in right here and hit accept, we can see it's live, right? It turns green and it jumps to the next one. I can even change right on the floor if it's a pass or fail, maybe if it's a thread or something. So I can hit accept. That again turns green, goes to the next one. Now if I enter in a false data or bad number, if you will, automatically pops up and says, wait a minute, this is bad. Would you like to measure it again? But if it really is bad, we can say keep failed, and automatically pops up with a non-conformance record that we can enter right here, right on the floor. But let's talk about SPC, because that's what this is all about. So similarly, this would be where you could enter the information in right on the shop floor. Okay. Additionally, we have the shop floor SPC. Now on the shop floor SPC side, we have the same type of look, right? Same type of menu system. We can go into the same exact gallery search. However, in this time, we'll come down to SPC demo. And here's because it has 30 pieces of data in here. So we can see right here, 30 pieces. Same type of dashboard. But as we come in here, we can also see we have multiple operations. Wanted to point that out. And we don't have data for Op 20 right now. But if we did, we could specify the specific operation that would have the data. So we can, if the Fred, let's call him, is out on the floor and he's running Op 20, we can just show the SPC for Op 20 for this part. Okay, right here up here in the manufacturing operation. But here it's a very similar look. Here's all of the dimensional information off to the right, or excuse me, the left. And then on the right of that, you can see SPC yes, SPC no. And you just simply select it or deselect it, and it'll say, hey, do I want to track SPC on this or not? And when we hit select, it'll go right into our run charts on the floor. What a lot of our customers do who use this is they will keep this chart up on the floor on some type of monitor, maybe monitoring device, maybe a large screen TV or something, so that way they can see this ongoing. And all of these unique points here are is the run chart and the individual information as it's being entered. We can look down at the bottom here. Here's our SPC charts. We also have drawings and part information. If I click on drawings, we also have a depiction of the drawing itself. And this is dynamic too. We can move this around, zoom in, zoom out, so they can see which dimensions may be bad or going out of control or what have you. We also have the part information right down here at the bottom. Has all the customer, part name, part number, drawing sheets, all of the information, the job number, the title, when it was put in. We have all of that information captured right in there. However, whoops, wrong button. We can also go into each individual and we can see the capability information right here, right? Here's the CP, CPK, PP, PPK. But if we click on this button right here, we can also go into it and see how it relates to the calculated control limits, where it's looking for the spec limits. We also have notification set up to where if it's at a spec limit, or excuse me, if it's out of spec, please notify these people. We even have a measure button right here to where they can enter measurement information right on the shop floor. Okay, so they could enter it in right here, see real time what the gauges, or excuse me, what the dimension is doing, how the chart is reacting, what the recalculated CP/CPK is. It always grabs the last 30. It's a variable, but by default, it's set up to always look at the last 30 measurements and calculate it that way, but you can change that or change the subgroup value, what have you. But this information is to note, if we go back into Inspection Manager and go into the same part record, we can come up here to SPC. We have the same exact information available in Inspection Manager. So if I'm an inspector or maybe a quality engineer or quality manager, and I get a notification if something is entered in out on the floor and it's maybe an out of spec condition, or in a future version, we're going to have an out of control condition, it can be a notification as well. I could get a notification of an out of spec condition. They could enter in a non-conformance report. I could log in from my desk, see exactly what these see where it went out, what feature it is, what dimension, what lot, what job, what part, what serial number. We have all of that information available to you. And again, it's synchronized because it's pulling from the same exact database. Okay. And we also have, again, notifications set up for a multitude of things. If it has a non-conformance, we can notify from a non-conformance report. A person can log in. You could be at if you're a quality engineer working from home that day, you could log in like by a VPN or something and be able to access this data right at your facility or wherever you are currently. So that's pretty much it for the SPC side of it. So I will turn it back over to Lisa and see if we have any questions.
Okay, great. Thanks, Tim. Perfect timing. We're right at the 30-minute mark. And as Tim said, now is a good time for us to take a look at questions, and we invite you to continue to ask questions. There is a little Q&A tab if you missed it at the bottom of your screen. Just go ahead and type in there. In the meantime, we did have a couple questions come in. Let's take a look. The first one says, is this only for new data, or can it calculate historical data as well?
Oh, good question. So the neat thing about being a database-driven application is that as we're entering data in, whether it's from a CMM, whether it's on the shop floor, let's come back over here to parts and reports. I can show you what it looks like. So every time we measure data, it's going to come in as an additional part right here in the sample section. So we'll always grab the last 30 from a calculation standpoint, but as long as you're using Inspection Manager and you're adding this data in over time, even let's say hypothetically you've been measuring parts for a year and then you decide that you want to maybe evolve your business and start tracking SPC. Okay, great. You could buy the SPC module and then have all of the, track all of the historical data. What do I mean by that? Maybe you're running along and you notice, hey, we don't seem to be in control anymore. Our CP value is running a little high. And you could come to the conclusion that, well, it didn't used to. How did we run a year ago? You could actually stop and recalculate by selecting different numbers right here as to how you want that calculated. So you can do a comparison of now to maybe a year ago or 6 months ago or whatever. You can always use historical data for your calculations as well. It's a good question.
Okay, great. Here's another question. It says, how do you identify find numbers?
Find numbers. I'm not sure what you mean by a find number.
Okay, whoever asked the question, if you want to clarify, feel free to add additional information there. Here's another question. It says, in my office, we are using LX AS400 right now. I want to know how we will work with that.
LX AS400. I believe what you mean is the data is going into your LX system as opposed to high QA. We could, if there's an export capability from there, we could import it into Inspection Manager, or from, in this case, we could actually a couple different things. We could populate it into Inspection Manager and then push that data up to LX. So we're kind of sharing information bidirectionally. Or you could even switch over, right? You could switch over and use the high QA version of it to be able to track SPC and acquire data that way. Hope I'm answering that question correctly for you.
Okay, perfect. Yes, the person said yes, so excellent.
Perfect.
Here's another question. If I already have Inspection Manager, can this be added to it?
Oh, great question. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. If you're running Inspection Manager, we can, this is an add-on module, if you will, and it's, you can always add it on. A neat thing for our current customers, most of our new customers utilize the subscription, and it's a subscription format, so it's prorated. So you're only going to pay for what you use. But yes, it can be added to any version. Absolutely. Good question.
Perfect. Okay, well, it looks like that's actually all of the questions that came in. If
Okay.
anyone has questions later on today or anytime in the future, feel free to reach out to us at any time. And Tim is putting the contact information up here on the screen. And if you'd like another personalized demo, feel free to click that link there as well. And we're happy to set that up for you. We do hold these sessions on a monthly basis too. Each month we feature a slightly different topic. So we hope to see you on our next Spotlight webinar. Thanks everyone. Thanks again, Tim. Have a great day.